So it's time to cast on a sweater. So for those of you who've been around for a little while, you've seen over the past couple of weeks that I've been working out the design and numbers for a Lopi sweater using some Lopi yarn and with the aid of the Lopi sweater knitting book. So it's my guideline. I'm not using the numbers or a pattern directly from here, but I am using it for guidance. Now, according to that book, typically Lopi sweaters will start with the sleeves rather than the body. So we're going to do that. And typically they would start them on DPNs. So I have worked with DPNs before. It's how I learnt to knit socks. I don't use them very often, but they can be handy for small circumference knitting. So as far as the book goes, you start with DPNs and then switch to magic loop or circular needle as and when you need to. So I have 3.5mm zings to start from my cuff, and I have 4mm Knit Pro Mindful DPNs for the rest of the sleeve as far as I can. You'll notice there's quite a difference in length. I maybe should have gone for the zings for the 4mm, but these were the ones I could find. So there are 5 needles in a DPN set, so it takes a bit of finagling to get everything set up and worked out. So I'm going to cast on with my zings 48 stitches. I've put my notes into a PDF and onto my knitting pattern app and my charts as well, so that I'm not fiddling around with paper and stuff. Plus the printer was being an arse. So using my 3.5mm needles, I'm going to cast on 48 stitches onto that one of the needles, and then I'm going to rearrange them so they're on 4, and then you actively knit with the 5th needle. So my initial thought was to work 2x2 rib, but this is a 1x1 rib, which is quite smart. And I've got other sweaters that are in 1x1 rib. No, I think I'll stick with 2x2 for this project. I think it's going to work fine. It does mean I won't be doing an Italian bind off. It is possible on 2x2. It's just more straightforward on 1x1, but that's okay. A standard bind off will be fine. I think there is even an Icelandic one. So yes, we're going to start with that. I'm going to work 2 inches of ribbing on the zings. Then I'll switch to my other DPNs. So let's re-angle the camera, and I'm going to put on a show and get to that. And I'll see you on the other side of the ribbing. So I've got my 2-inch cuff there on my 3.5mm needles. So now it's time to switch to the 4mm needles, and I'm going to do an increase round. So I'm going to add on 12 stitches. That's just so that it sits looser around my arm when I get to the colourwork portion. So I'm going to stick with the 4mm needles for the sleeve as far as I can. I mean, I'll go as far as I can on the DPNs and then switch to the circular. I'm going to stick with 4mm for the sleeve, even though there's a little bit of colourwork. I don't think it'll make too much difference to the gauge for the size of colourwork that it is. I might need to go up to 4.5 for the yoke, but we'll see. So yeah, so switching needle time. Okay, so we've worked the colour work repeat for the cuff. I have actually reduced the height of it. I only worked every other round, so it was a bit thinner for the cuff, just because the level of contrast between the main colour and the contrast may or may not do the same when I get to the yoke. With the other colours, it might not be so stark, but we'll see. Because if I do it this way, it will probably change the shape of the bottom of the colour work pattern because it's shallower. So yeah, so we'll see when we get that far what we end up doing. Next step is increases on the sleeve. So we're going to do that every 8th row until we get to 88 stitches. So I cast on 48, so we're adding 40. So I'm only going to be increasing 2 at a time every 8th row. So yes, we'll see. Okay, so we've got quite far along. I've got a couple more increases to do. Go on about increase 12 and I need to do 14. So yeah, so we're getting quite far along. The sleeve should have this done this weekend, probably after the video goes up though. So a little bit of information about knitting with this particular yarn. Used this much of this plate so far, so that's what I've got left for my first plate. I was expecting it to break a lot more than it has. I've only had one accidental break, and that's when I caught it under my elbow, so user error there. But it's easier to knit with than I expected. It's softer in the hand as you're knitting than I expected. But you might be able to pick up on camera the fuzziness, the hairiness that's coming off the finished fabric. So it's not smooth when it's knitted up, but the actual process of knitting it is quite smooth. So I would expect those of us who are sensitive to yarn, to wool in particular, will find this quite prickly. So not next to skin type of yarn, but I mean I was expecting that. I wasn't expecting it to be a next to skin kind of yarn. So I'm going to keep knitting on this. As I say, I should get this first sleeve done this weekend, and then I'll move on to the second sleeve. I'll put these stitches on hold. Move on to the second sleeve and then the body. It's going to be a little while before I do another dedicated video on this particular project because it's going to take a bit of time to knit up the rest of the sleeve, the second sleeve and the body to get to the point where I'm picking up for the yoke. So it might be January before we get to that point. But yeah, that's fine. I will keep you updated with how it's progressing throughout December. Yeah, so that's that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. In the meantime, there's this one here that might be of interest to you, and I will see you soon. But until then, happy crafting and bye-bye for now.